Hello everyone, my name's Diego. I'm a library assistant with the Stanley Milner Library, and I'm also a journalist with this brand new Great Stuff crew team. And today's list, I'm going to be going into tough subjects. So these are areas that people are nervous about getting into just because it doesn't seem simple or they don't really know where to start. So for that, I've gathered for you 7 books for 7 great subjects. Each of these are excellent to read, and I think you're going to enjoy reading them. You might even find yourself talking about them once you get started, and they're just great ways to get your foot in the door for these particular subjects. So let's get to the books.
Number 7.
Ding! History. Now, it's not everybody's favorite subject, given. Not for a lot of people anyways. I think history books have, in the past, they've usually tended to run very dryly. They're written assuming that you want everything as one large and long info dump. But recently, there's been a growing trend towards what's known as narrative nonfiction, or basically putting the story back into his story. And a great example of this is this book right here. This is Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, and it's written by T. Jack Weatherford. There are so many reasons why I'm picking this book. First of all, the author, Weatherford, he knows how to keep this exciting. How do you make history exciting? You make it personal. We're writing about Genghis Khan. All right, he was born in the middle of nowhere. He feuded with his family. He fought hardscrabble to take over the world. If this guy didn't exist, Hollywood would have invented him. And all that Weatherford is doing is he's presenting elements that are already in the history without sensationalizing it. Khan is very naturally a rags to riches story which happens to have these great Godfather-like family crime drama points. Already at this young age, Temujin, who would later go on to become Genghis Khan, played the game of life, not merely for honor or prestige, but to win. He stalked his brother as if he were hunting an animal, just as he would later prove to have a genius for converting hunting skills into war tactics. Like the horse that must be first in every race, Temujin had determined he would lead, not follow. In order to achieve this primacy of place, he proved himself willing to violate custom, defy his mother, and kill whoever blocked his path, even if it was his own family member. Now, he doesn't keep this martial tone throughout the whole book. The second good thing about this book is that Weatherford really does a great job challenging your impression of Genghis Khan and of his empire as well. Good example of this. After conquest, Khan knew how to give responsibility and power back to the vanquished. He effectively ruled his empire through peace, as strange as that may sound. And the vast enormity of the empire meant that they had to develop this infrastructure that we're still using today. So the postal service, paved roads, these were things that started with Genghis Khan and his family. So by all means, do come to the book for the very thrilling and visceral bloodletting and battle scenes, all of which are excellently written, but do stay for the secret history of civilization because you might be surprised what you learn.
Number 6.
Ding! The music business. Now, if you're not acquainted with it, yes, it seems mysterious and out there, but it very much can impact your life. I mean, have you ever wondered why that song you can't stand keeps getting airplay? Or maybe why CD prices are still as high as they are? Maybe you'd rather not be fined tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars for your illegal downloads. And that's the gist. You don't have to be a musician to be affected by the music business. And this book is Ripped, How the Wired Generation Revolutionized Music by Greg Kot. Now, Kot is a long-standing rock critic for the Chicago Tribune, and honestly, this man has probably seen it all. So while this book doesn't have what some of the other books on my list have, which is just one long narrative thread, what he does do here is he gives little chapters, which are little reports on different angles of the business. So it honestly reads like reading 20 really good, strong war stories. We used to fool ourselves, Warner Music Group's CEO Edgar Bronfman said. We used to think our content was perfect, just exactly as it was. We expected our business would remain blissfully unaffected, even as the world of interactivity, constant connection, and file sharing was exploding. And of course, we were wrong. How were we wrong? By standing still, we inadvertently went to war with consumers by denying them what they wanted and could otherwise find. And as a result, of course, consumers won. I think the book is ultimately very forward-looking. Now, most of the artists and resources and websites that Cott is writing about, they're all very much part of the 2000s. So you have Death Cab for Cutie, and Napster, and Pitchfork, and Danger Mouse, and Arcade Fire, and the iPod. And that doesn't really mean that the book is dated. It's just that he's writing about a certain watershed point in the music industry where it really started to converge with digital culture. And I think that's really essential to consider. It's a book that's going to leave you at the same time informed, it's going to make you mad, it's going to keep you hopeful, I hope at least, and for all of its ideas, it is absolutely worth your time.
Number 5.
Ding! Hip-hop. And yes, I actually am calling hip-hop a difficult subject. People don't bother trying to get it. The problem isn't in the rap or the rapper or the culture. The problem is that so many people don't even know how to listen to the music. So earlier this year, I did a talk on the Grey Album, which is a mashup between the Beatles and Jay-Z. And it was really more of a talk about copyright and mashup culture, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But first I'd spend time with the music. Now, I knew Beatles music quite fine, but I've never given Jay-Z too much attention, so I needed to get a grounding. What I found was quite good. So really it's 3 books in one, to me. First of all, it is a bio of Jay-Z. Fairly important. Tells you where he comes from a ghettoized housing project where the best life for young men seems to include selling drugs. A culture that breeds hustlers, in other words. He himself acknowledges this. He doesn't really distance himself from this past. He seems to be perfectly happy milking it for his art form, which I guess sort of leads into the fact of the second book, which is a primer for hip-hop, and a good primer for hip-hop as well. Now, there's tons of great books on the history of hip-hop out there, and you should read them. However, what this book does, probably better than the other ones, is that it just, by the mere fact that it has a lead character, it actually has an individual you can actually sort of pin your discovery on as he literally just sort of emerges from this culture and really takes on and learns and challenges himself about the art form. And sometimes that's what makes a great narrative nonfiction book, is just actually having that narrative through line. And this book delivers that. It's very personal in that respect, and I think that's what makes it a good intro. When I recorded Hard Knock Life, Ghetto Anthem, over a mix of the theme song from Annie, I wasn't worried about the clash between the hard lyrics and the image of red-headed Annie. Instead, I found the mirror between the two stories, that Annie's story was mine and mine was hers, and the song was the place where our experiences weren't contradictions, just different dimensions of the same reality. But I felt like the chorus to that song perfectly captured what little kids in the ghetto felt every day. Instead of kisses, we get kicked. We might not all have literally been orphans, but a whole generation of us had basically raised ourselves in the streets. During my live shows, I always stop the music and throw it to the crowd during the chorus. I stare out as a sea of people, old heads, teenagers, black, white, whatever, throw their hands up and heads back and sing like it's the story of their own lives. Thirdly, it's Jay-Z writing about and annotating his favorite songs, and that's just kind of icing on the cake for me. If you're on the fence about a book like this, think about it this way. Think about a book if it was written by Miles Davis or Bob Dylan, and if they wrote about their growth in the genre, and they took the time to break down their best songs down to the smallest detail, you would read that. You should read this.
Number 4.
Ding! Economics. And out of all the possible tough subjects, this is the one that I'm really the most afraid of. The only class I ever failed. Now, please don't think that I'm about to unload a number of books on you that are about tax shelters and fiscal reform. No. Instead, I'm looking at economics on a very broad, abstract level, something that you could pick up with just very simple fundamentals. And it's really not where you'd expect it to be. What I actually have is a book on copyright reform that is secretly a book on economics. And I'm talking about Lawrence Lessig's Remix, Making Art and Commerce Thrive in the Hybrid Economy. Commercial and sharing economies coexist. Indeed, they complement each other. Psychologists don't begrudge friendship, even though the stronger the economies of friendship in a society, the weaker the demand for shrinks. The band Wilco doesn't begrudge a church choir, even if the choir gives its work away for free, while Wilco charges plenty for one of their concerts. We all understand that similar things can be offered within different economies. We celebrate this diversity. Only a fanatic would advocate wiping away one economy simply because of its effect on the other. Lessig is a law professor from Stanford, but that does not mean that his tone is dry. It's actually quite a really engaging voice that he uses to write with. What he does is he talks about different ideas about economies in order to help build his central copyright argument. For example, not all of our economies run on money. And that's key to understanding his point. Once you get something like that, then economics on principle actually becomes a little less frightening. And if you're anything like me, you need a certain perspective in order to feel more comfortable with the subject. So, whatever reason you have for reading this book, copyright or economics, you really should read it. I'm quite serious about this. It will help.
Number 3.
Ding! Recovery. Now, I don't want to be cute with this at all. I consider myself to be very lucky that myself and my entire family and my friends, we have not had to deal with crippling addiction. It's one of those subjects that if you don't get exposed to it, chances are with very good intentions, you think that you can contain it in your head, but you're probably coming at it from a very safe position, and chances are you're getting it wrong. I will say it again. In my life, I have never encountered alcoholism. The closest I've ever come has been with this book here. This is called Drinking, a Love Story by Carolyn Knapp. Enough? That's a foreign word to an alcoholic. Absolutely unknown. There is never enough. No such thing. You're always after that insurance, always mindful of it. Always so relieved to drink that first drink and feel the warming buzz in the back of your head. Always so intent on maintaining the feeling, reinforcing the buzz, adding to it, not losing it. A woman I know calls alcoholism the disease of more, a reference to the greediness so many of us tend to feel around liquor, the grabbiness, the sense of impending deprivation, and the certainty we'll never have enough. More is always better to an alcoholic. More is necessary. Why have 2 drinks when you can have 3? 3 if you can have 4. Why stop? This is so easy to do, so frighteningly simple. For a long time you drink because the drink just seems to be available, and then, at some point way down the line, you drink because you make it available. Without being completely aware of it, you organize your life in such a way that alcohol is always there, at a table over dinner, in your cupboard and refrigerator, in the cupboards and refrigerators of your closest friends. You hang out with other drinkers, people who find it perfectly desirable and perfectly normal to down 6 bottles of wine in a single sitting, people who support both the effort and the denial of its consequences. Knapp was a brilliant essayist. She also suffered from anorexia and alcoholism. I'm grateful that she had the opportunity to chronicle her experiences. Her prose is remarkably clear. I think her reminiscences are very engaging, and she had an ability to make sense of it all that was absolutely second to none, especially for people like myself who are from the outside looking in. It's a very human piece of work. Now, if you don't think that you're the target audience for this book, too damn bad. You should probably be reading this anyways. It's great writing, and you don't ever know where you're going to be. And if you are currently being touched by addiction, I'm very sorry. I cannot simulate what you are going through, but I think you might find that this is a very welcome piece of hope. But let's move on.
Number 2.
Ding! Happiness. Now, happiness is a subject that gets a lot of ink, and we've been writing about happiness for centuries now. There's whole bookstore sections that exist just on this weird subject. But I want to talk about a book that's a little bit different from all that. I want a book that A, doesn't approach happiness as a set of instructions. And B, I wanted something that, like everything else in this list, has a really great story built into it. Now, what is this book? Eric Weiner, The Geography of Bliss. So what Weiner does is visit the 9 happiest countries in the world, and Moldova, which is sad. And it gets to the heart of why these countries believe they're happy. Now, there's lots of reasons. You have a country like Qatar, which has a lot of money, and that maybe kind of helps. Thailand, on the other hand, tends to be, on a national level, very, very carefree, their concept of Mai Pen Rai. And Iceland will accept something like failure, but not dwell on it, and is happy to just keep moving on. There are no strangers in Iceland. People are constantly running into friends and acquaintances. It's not unusual for people to show up 30 minutes late for work because en route they encountered a parade of friends. This is a perfectly valid excuse, by the way, for being late. The Icelandic equivalent of traffic was hell. So these are countries with very different approaches to happiness. There's not one solid prescription you're going to find, no one-size-fits-all type of approach to happiness. But the beauty of the book is that you're going to find a theory of happiness that's really going to appeal to you.
Number 1.
Ding! Saving the world. That's a tall order, no? But I'm not talking about movie-level heroics. I'm talking about real-life threats to civilization, like pandemic disease. And that's why there's a really nice surprise in the back of this book. This is Stephen Johnson's The Ghost Map, the story of London's most terrifying epidemic and how it changed science, cities, and the modern world. Now, maybe I've just got a soft spot for Transformer books that are outwardly about one subject and then secretly about something else. And that's what Ghost Map is like. I think when you pick up Ghost Map, obviously you're expecting a history lesson, and that's okay. The first 2/3 of the book deal with a cholera outbreak in Victorian London, and how it took two very different people, one of them being a pure researcher, and the other one a streetwise priest, to come together and challenge the establishment in order to find a cure. And that part is good reading. It's the last part of the book, the big surprise epilogue. It's where Johnson takes the big lesson from this historical example, and he directly applies it to modern practices. And let me tell you, that absolutely blows the lid off of everything. It is glorious nonfiction. It is very forward-looking. I think it's somewhat hopeful, and he's very much writing about processes when he's writing this tail end of the book. And if you want to start thinking about how you can approach global problems, this is probably the way that you want to go. In short, you really should be reading this one too. Well, look at that. 7 tough subjects, 7 ways to get started. And hopefully at least one of these sounds interesting enough for you to check out, so let me help you get there. This is a quick address for you to get to all 7 titles on the EPL website. And if you don't know what this is, this little jumbly character bit paired with this bit.ly, it's going to translate into a website. That's my explanation. Take my word for it. Otherwise, thank you all. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe to the EPL.ca YouTube channel. We are going to try to get more of these up, maybe, so do keep checking back. Otherwise, from EPL, from the Great Stuff crew, my name is Diego. Thanks.